sleeper must awake.
With all of the crap that we see around the world, going on around the world, all the crap, the shocking things that are coming out every day in various forms of media, it's understandable that we'll see activists popping up all around us, because of course when we see injustice or things that are said, laws that are suggested and passed, people feel a responsibility to voice out their worries, their fears, but also their convictions and their beliefs. And I guess because of that, I'm often thinking about that, but maybe more these days. I've been thinking about what is the importance of the kind of work that I am doing here with this show and with writing books and stuff like that. More specifically, working on the subject of mysticism and spirituality. I guess there's an argument that could be made that there's more important things to do in the world. And this is what I asked myself. And I really, really struggled with this idea of where could I be more useful. And I came right back to where I was and where I am right now, which is in front of this camera, recording these words. Because I do feel like mysticism is extremely important nowadays, and that now that's the tricky part. By itself, inherently, mysticism is a form of activism. Actually, you know what? I'm not even completely honest by saying that. And I kind of played a little trick on you. It's nothing dishonest, or I played a little trick with the title of this show, and you'll understand what I mean a bit later if you stick around. It's no clickbait or anything. It's just yep. All right, I'm not saying any more on that. So that was a very, very hard show to do. I have to say, I'm kind of proud of myself because I redid the whole thing 4 times. And usually I'm like, good enough. But this time, this subject feels like it feels important to me. And I wanted to do it justice, and to do this the best that I was able to do. And I truly feel that this 4th attempt is not only the best one so far, but also the best that I can do with what I know and what I'm able to do right now. So I hope you enjoy it, of course, but I hope the message comes across. So here we are, episode 15 of Hopscotch Chronicles. I am still Dominic Vallee. I might be an activist, or am I? You will know by the end of this show. All right, some quick notes before we start. First of all, we've passed on YouTube, at least, we've passed the 100 subscribers mark. Actually, we're at 120 right now. And so I want to say thanks to everyone who's subscribed so far. And also I want to say that I'm really happy about how things are going up until now, because the comments are really nice. There's a lot of really thoughtful comments, and so far in the comments there's no like shit throwing and just bickering or whatever, which is very encouraging for the future of this show. So thank you very much to all the subscribers on YouTube. Another little thing that I really want to highlight is on Patreon. I already had two supporters who are two people that are very close to me. So of course I feel a lot of gratitude for that, for them to encourage me. But officially I can say that Hopscotch Chronicles and me, I guess, because it's all me, we have a first supporter on Patreon. And it's kind of encouraging, when it's someone who you don't know, they don't owe you anything or whatever, but they feel like this work should be encouraged. And so, yeah, I don't know if you want to be named, although I'm pretty sure you didn't use your real name, but first supporter, whom I don't know, thank you from the bottom of my heart. There you go. So if there's more of you who find value in this work, patreon.com/Dominic Vallee. It's I'm hoping to make something fun out of this Patreon, because there isn't a lot of people there yet, so it's kind of hard to make it feel alive. But the more people will be there, the more it'll feel like a little community, maybe even, and it'll be cool. So, all right. That's a biggie, this today's show, so I'm gonna leave it at that. And I truly hope that I was clear enough in what I had to say, and that you will find it inspiring in a way or another. So yep, let's move on with the main topic of the show. Enjoy. Today's subject is not an easy one, and I guess it has to do in parts because the term mysticism itself is not that clear. I see it used in many ways. Even the term mystic is used in various manners to define different individuals. So I'm not here to argue about what mysticism is or is not. Ultimately, what I want to do now by defining these terms is to give it a working definition for this episode, and of course it's going to be debatable, I guess, but for the objectives of this this show, we're gonna make it very simple. Actually, I could start with what it's not. So mysticism is not, or at least not necessarily, occultism. It's not necessarily a religion either. It could be, but the path is so highly personal that mystics will take many different approaches, and thus it cannot be like confined with these terms or defined by these terms. Like I kind of see I see similarity with music and a musician, the idea of a musician or music. It's kind of similar, as in, some people will say that Mozart or Bach or are musicians, and what they produce is music. Actually, I'm guessing not a lot of people will argue with that. But that said, if you take like a death metal band like Cannibal Corpse, a lot of people will hear that and say that's not music. Although I can tell you that those musicians are technically very proficient, but that's another story. Same goes with the term musician. Well, of course, if someone is playing music, but another person says, well, that person is not playing music because that's not music, well, it makes them technically not musicians. So it's the same thing with mysticism and being a mystic. I'm going to define what it is very shortly. But first, in the last interview that I published with Mitch Horowitz, I asked him at one point if he had a distinction between occultism and mysticism, and I really like his definition of mysticism. So here it goes. Mitch is so articulate, and his vocabulary dwarfs mine, maybe even dwarfs my French vocabulary. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. Here it is.
I think that mysticism is probably a larger umbrella under which you find all kinds of spiritual expressions. By spiritual, I mean extra-physical. And it seems to me that the mystical is the idea of contacting some unseen principle of life without any mediator. So you don't need a congregation, a doctrine, the man in the robes, a particular liturgy, a list of do's and don'ts. Mysticism is really a direct search. And one can find it within what we call the religions. One can find it within the occult. I suppose, in its highest iteration, mysticism is an effort at direct perception of an unseen principle.
I really love it. It's concise and but also very permissive in many ways, and it's very succinct. This impulse to go towards the spiritual, and especially as he defined it, the extra physical. I mean, for me, it's as basic as that. Mysticism is this belief that there is extra physicality, very basically. But also, I thought I'd share a definition I found in a French dictionary, which I translated basically word for word, and I was very impressed by that definition because it feels like only a mystic could come up with such a good definition. So I don't know. Props to Le Petit Robert, which is one of the two biggest French dictionaries out there. So here's what the Petit Robert has to say. Beliefs and practices, we're talking about mysticism, of course. Beliefs and practices aiming for an intimate union between the human and the principle of being. I mean, that's precise enough, and but still, it allows mysticism to flourish in one's experience if you just keep it at that. The intimate union between human and the principle of being. I love it. This principle of being, which is very elusive and mysterious. Mysticism. See? All right, so as for the term activism, well, it seems more clear, although personally I haven't really thought of that concept because I've never really seen myself as an activist. It's only just these days that I've been really wondering about that. So I asked for the help of ChatGPT, which I feel is very good sometimes at just summarizing complex ideas and concepts. So here's what ChatGPT says about activism. Activism is the effort to promote, impede, direct, or intervene in social, political, economic, or environmental reform with the desire to make changes in society. It often involves advocating for a particular cause, supporting a movement, or working towards social and political transformation. So, right there, we can gather from this and feel from this that activism is generally an outward concept, as in it's based on a set of beliefs and values which are usually considered part of our inner world or our psychology, although they have sometimes external motivations, but still, basically it's an inward move towards the external world in order to change it, to affect it. Maybe maybe some of you already kind of see like how it's kind of a tricky thing, like connecting mysticism and activism. But still, I will start with an idea of, I will continue, with an idea of how mysticism could be, or I guess how the value of mysticism could be pushed through a form of activism. So, as we saw in the dictionary definition, mysticism is based on at least one belief, and that belief is that reality has at least one extra physical overarching aspect that is intertwined with the material world. So, and I mean, there's a lot of examples of how this belief is enacted in different mystics or seekers out there. For example, yes, the interest in religions or philosophy, but then also practices like what is considered occult practices, which are kind of ways to interface with the extra-physical. So, divination, astrology, different forms of magic, but also sometimes it's expressed through an interest in things that are closer to us, are more personal, like just dreams, dream work, noticing synchronicities, and try to figure out what this concept could mean, or even what it is, or developing one's intuition and stuff like that. So I guess that this interest for all these modalities for extraphysical, metaphysical exploration could be pushed as any other idea or concept, according to a belief that it's better, that pushing for people to explore religions and have dream journals like would make this world a better place. I guess it could be done if you're a mystic and you're gonna organize protests for people to do daily tarot readings or something like that. But I'm guessing you kind of already see kind of a problem with that. And the problem arises because the mystical path, or I should use plural here, because this kind of experience of life and this search for a greater quote-unquote reality is highly personal and most of the time indefinite and like very hard to categorize in any ways. And actually we can I think a good quote from it's a quote I often use, a quote from Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. Maybe you know him. He was interviewed once and he said that in his experience, he's interviewed thousands of people on spiritual matters and philosophical matters. So in his experience, among their own traditions, when they're part of a tradition, mystics are often misunderstood, and usually they get along better with other mystics because they understand this undefined quality of the search. And so I'm guessing the mystics are not necessarily the ones who are gonna join their congregations to go manifest against or protest against some new law that's going to be passed or anything like that. So yeah, you can already see the problem, and this is where I have to reveal. I mentioned it quickly in the intro, that I kind of played a little trick on you while deciding on a title for this show. And the little trick is that I didn't use the title I really, really wanted to use. If it was just up to me, I guess it kind of is, but this show would have been titled Mysticism is Anti-Activism. But then we already have one term, mysticism, which is kind of unclear. I didn't want to add another one, and more precisely, I didn't want people to think right from the start that I'm implying that mysticism is against activism. It's absolutely not the case, and I use it more in that expression, an anti-hero, and just to to make it super clear, an anti-hero is a hero who has the qualities of that we see conventionally in heroes, like, for example, courage or a sense of duty, or maybe they despise injustice and all of that. But also they have aspects, characteristics of that are kind of contrary to what we're used to see in heroes. So maybe they're reluctant, maybe they're bothered by the burden that brings their superpowers, or maybe they're very cynical about the world. Yeah, maybe they have low self-esteem, things like that. So this is what I mean when I say that mysticism is a form of anti-activism. As in many ways, maybe you can already see that, but I'll explain a bit more. In many ways, mysticism is not compatible with the notion of activism. But also, it kind of is activism if mysticism is, as Mitch Horowitz described in its highest iteration, mysticism kind of doesn't have a choice to be a form of activism. Let me explain. So we'll start with how mysticism is not really compatible with the notion of activism as it's commonly expressed or seen out there. So I guess the main contradiction has to do with expression. So outwardness, kind of how I described it before. Even more precisely, expressing values and ideas through words. And actually, maybe that's why the term mysticism is so hard to define itself, because the mystical experience is very unclear and hard to express with words and ideas. So, activism is inherently an outward movement, especially to change big things like it said, like ChatGPT said, society, to change economics and politics, etc. As mysticism is more of an inward thing, or actually that's highly debatable. Personally, yeah, I'll say it like that. My mysticism aims at connecting myself with the external world in many ways. So, but still, there's still this introspective aspect of mysticism, which is inherent. I think it's kind of required, but it's still connected with the outward world. Actually, it's kind of weird to differentiate the two, but just for the exercise, we'll do that now. But it deals generally, it puts us in relationship with smaller things on a wider scale. It's more smaller things like our relationships, the way we interact with strangers, the way we spend our money. All of this is going to be informed by our mystical views and experience of life, because it expands on reality and puts us in a different relationship with quote unquote reality. So because of that, this outward thing is kind of problematic and kind of incoherent with the notion of mysticism. Also, the mystical work is based on direct experiences. So there's going to be a very maybe that's what differentiates religious, I don't want to be mean, but religious zealots from the mystics of a very same tradition, is one will just rely on what is written in the book, whatever the book is, or whatever the teacher or the master says, and as the mystic will rely more on their direct interactions with metaphysical principles. And so again, this is a very personal thing. It cannot really be taught. I can't, like, even if I talk to you about all my weird and mind-blowing experiences, there's no way for me to inculcate it to you, to just get people to experience the same thing that I did, just with words. It's not like teaching math. It's very different. And so it cannot be regimented. The mystic path cannot be regimented or categorized. And so how can you be an activist and be very vocal about what way is better or what way should be avoided? I mean, again, I guess it could be debated that pushing for people to open to extra physicality could be a good thing, but that's about it, and that's pretty vague. So one last thing that makes it well, I guess it's kind of similar to what I just said. Why mysticism doesn't really connect with activism is because the experience and the path are completely dependent on the seeker's built. And by built, I mean their egoic nature or their egoic vehicle, which I know I have like a weird definition of the ego, and maybe one day I'll explain that. I kind of invented it. Maybe it's bullshit, but so I would call this egoic vehicle, well, basically it's the self, but it includes our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our intellect. And since we are built so differently, which takes us back to the previous point, it cannot be taught or regimented, but also discovering and understanding the particularities of this vehicle is entirely up to the seeker or the mystic. Of course, sometimes we will encounter teachers who can kind of help us, like raise the right questions, or kind of push us towards a more likely area, more likely to help us understand who we are and what reality is. But even a good teacher will have to adapt, to the person in front of them. So everyone's different. There's no one size fits all option for the mystical path, I guess. There's no truly good or bad approach. It's made of failures and successes, and over time those all kind of blend. Or actually outside of time, those experience, good and bad, they kind of get fuzzy. So this is not it doesn't jive with the idea of pushing ideas forward in the hope to have people adopt them. That said, I did say that mysticism is anti-activism, in the sense that it still is a form of activism, while retaining the qualities contrary to what activism is. So, for the seeker, the mystical experiences have profound effects, and thus create profound changes in the person. I mean, for the I don't want to sound demeaning again, but for the regular Joe or Jane out there, there are some experiences that are life-changing and have deeply influential effects to them, like falling in love for the first time, or experiencing trauma, or whatever you or maybe sometimes it's a movie that there's kind of a before and after in our lives, in our life view and perception, because of art sometimes. That said, I guess it's part of the seeker's experience to have more of those moments of, for lack of a better term, of moments of enlightenment. And I'm using the term very in a small way. I don't mean the big supposed transcending all reality and whatever meaning of the term enlightenment, but to pay attention to precognition, to those very, very unlikely coincidences, which are sometimes connected with a very meaningful symbols and all of that. It makes this seeker or the mystic on a constant path of change, especially if they're very, very sincere with their search. And so the impact on them is very profound. And because of that, the impact they will eventually have on others will also be more profound. Sometimes, whether they want it or not, they might start to lead, I'm going to put lead in quotes, by example. Not necessarily, and that's what's interesting. Not necessarily because of what they say or what they encourage others to do, but the integrity that can be developed through mysticism, at least over time. And I said it can be, it's not necessarily an automatic thing, but it does have an impact on others, when, especially in direct relationship. There's a sort of for a person who has a deeper grasp of who they are, or maybe who they're not, they develop a kind of charisma or a kind of radiance, which has, of course, it's going to have influence on other people around them. And to me, this is a more durable impact. And the thing is, it's a kind of influence that creates different things in different people. I'm reminded of when I used to do kendo, which is a Japanese martial art. And I remember my teacher and a lot of people were kind of jealous. Some of those who were kendo practitioners who were living further away from the school I went to, they were kind of jealous sometimes because I had the best teacher. And I think that what made him such a good teacher, well, first of all, he's clearly a mystic, at least from the definition we're working with right now. And he had this gift of seeing what was alive in his students. So he was able to see what's already there, just waiting to become, to evolve. So, and not only because of physical characteristics, like I'm tall and I'm heavy, so he would, of course, advise me in doing different things than someone who's very, very fast and maybe smaller. But also he would see in our character and the kind of attitude that we should develop to become a better fighter. And it was different for any all of the students. It was very, very specific. So see, that's a good example. It doesn't jive with just brutal activism, but it's still a way to deeply influence people, maybe on a longer term, because it's a change. The change that my teacher operated on people was based on their own nature. So I guess he was an anti-activist through his work, you know? And the last thing I'd say about how mysticism is compatible with activism is that I truly believe, well, that's kind of a belief, but I don't know if I'll find a lot of people contradicting me on that one, but if we change, or rather, if we expand ourselves outside of the boundaries of our self or our ego, it changes the world. Changing one self is changing the world, the entire world. That might sound a little, I don't know, Zen-y, or I don't know, non-dualistic, and maybe it sounds a bit romantic too, but I truly believe that. And the mystical path will take us, I want to be cautious with the words here because it's not a given, but I'm just going to say it. I think it often takes us to a notion of interconnectedness, or maybe even, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, of interdependence. So of course there's no given, okay? There's no promises. There's no path that will promise what I'm about to say. But I, at least personally, my seeking, my extending a hand towards the extra-physical opened me up to this principle of interconnectedness, and thus has changed my attitude towards the manifested world. And so this is what I mean by mysticism kind of by itself is a form of activism, because this very search or this very reaching out has had effects on me that are affecting the whole world on many levels, even on sociological, political, environmental issues. If it wasn't for my mystical experiences, I wouldn't have the same attitude and beliefs when it comes to these matters. So mysticism is activism. All right, so I want to conclude on this, which is something it's kind of the epilogue, because I think we can already see why mysticism is a form of activism or anti-activism. But what I'd like to add now is why I feel this kind of work, and by work I mean two things. I mean the personal work of the mystical endeavor, but I also mean the work that I'm doing now, and that so many people are doing, including the guests that are on this show. This work, I believe, has always been of importance, but now might be a better time than ever to become a mystic. And here's why. I feel like I've expressed it in some interviews, I believe, maybe some upcoming interviews, but some people are talking about the Great Reset. There was a book written on it, and I won't get into that, but which is something that would be coming in the in a few years. What I see for sure, I'm sure that I see it. I don't know if it'll happen. I'm not a prophet of any kind. But I feel like there's a great blur coming, as in a blur of information. Information that most of the people use to, well, first of all, a lot of activists use this information to be activists and to form beliefs and values which they will defend. I feel like we're about to lose a sense, for the metaphor, the sense of smell or sight or whatever. And this sense would be precisely that, our ability to see based on information around us. Already, I don't know about you, but I feel like it's harder and harder to gather information and to be sure of their veracity, or when there's events that are being talked about in media, all kinds of media, by the way, whether mainstream, legacy, or alternative media, it's harder and harder to understand what is the nature of those events, how they truly happened, what truly motivated them, what is true and false, and all of these things. It's already hard. And now enters AI. That was my trickster laugh right there. Because of that, this world is about to get a lot more confusing. And navigating the world, making decisions, even the smallest decisions, like what kind of food to buy or to stay away from, or decisions like who to vote for, or rather one should vote or not, or put their energy somewhere else. It's going to become more and more difficult to decide on those things with assurance. And maybe this great blur is coming faster than we believe. That said, why did I say that being a mystic or embarking on a mystic path is maybe more important now than ever? It's because when I presume it's true that people who, for example, will lose their sight will develop more of their other senses precisely to navigate this world. And since the information around us will create this big fuzzy abstract painting in front of us, we're going to need new tools. Those tools aren't new. They always existed. But maybe for some of us, they will be very new. So the tools to navigate this world and, just operate and decide on things. So what the mystic's path allows, in many cases, at least I believe, is these things. I'm just I won't develop too much on them because I don't want this video to be too long, but so I see 5 of those tools. First of all, to develop intuition. I'll just say very quickly that I actually could do a video or a podcast on just intuition alone, because it's not just this emotional thing. It's a bit more complex than that. But still, this is something the mystic can develop over time, which is very helpful in confusing situations. Then an attitude, and this one, it might be the most important one actually. An aptitude or attitude, or maybe both, of radical honesty, which starts with oneself. So a lot of the confusion around us, it's, as I said, like the incoming information is going to be more and more confusing, I think. But we don't really need that information to be that confusing to be confused, because we all have all those layers of filters that prevent us to see reality as it is. And to, at the very least, to acknowledge the presence of those filters, this attitude of radical honesty and integrity also has to be developed. I'm tempted to go deeper into that, because that's something that I value very, very much, but I have to move on. So, okay, radical honesty and integrity. The mystic, maybe because of that previous point, will develop a sense of self-knowledge. I'm not debating on what self is right now. Again, that's for another show. But just at the very least, to understand what our vehicles need, what their limits and strengths are, will help us greatly in maybe adapting to those chaotic times in which things are moving sometimes very, very fast. And also, I would say that when we don't have beacons of truth out there, things to hold on to, well, at the very least, have this internal sense of truth and maybe stability in a way will, of course, be very helpful in chaotic times. The fourth point is an understanding of our direct environment. So I was talking about that earlier. As you know, the mystical path or endeavor is more related to directly accessible things. And I do include the spiritual in that. What I mean is, whatever happens, not that it doesn't have its importance or whatever, but what happens in other parts of the world or or other galaxies, for that matter, maybe won't hold the same. I don't know if it makes sense. The pragmatic importance that we can actually do something with. And as I said, I do include extra-physical aspects in that. I would include our dreams to our direct environment. Because I don't mean direct in a physical sense. I mean direct in a directly accessible sense. So a knowledge of that, again, will be very helpful when our external view is so blurry and weird. And the last point, I think, is again very important for individuals, but also on a, and maybe that's the activist in me that says that right now, but our sense of meaning. There's an importance to consider and investigate that for ourselves. What meaning is. Is it created? Or is it received? Or is it an interaction thing? But the thing is, this sense of meaning is it is undefinable. And this is why some people nowadays, without getting too conspiratorial, people who are very intellect-based and solely intellect-based are being activists and trying to get people to believe that there is no inherent meaning to this life. That basically that life is meaningless. I won't make publicity for this particular person, but someone who's very well known, very renowned, has recently published a book for small children to teach them that the world is basically unfair. And yes, I guess I know at the very least, I don't know about that book, but I know this person really pushes this idea that meaning is an absolute, it's fabulation. It's complete, it's wishful thinking, basically, that there is any meaning to this world. And yeah, I guess this is maybe a belief that all mystics will share, that this life has meaning, a deep meaning, actually. But to bring it back on why it's important, why mysticism could be important, especially now, is that developing this sense of meaning keeps us alive. And I mean alive in the deepest sense, as in it keeps our most sacred aspects active and engaged with our lives, our day-to-day lives, you know? So, and yes, in all the confusion, with all the things that are happening, the shocking things that are in the news and on Twitter every day, starting with what holds meaning to us and how to operate and exchange and share meaning also is, I believe, primordial nowadays. So there you go. I'll end with this thought. I don't know, and I've written that in my book. I've really pondered on what I believe would be a better world, because I don't want to just cop out of this question and just say, well, I don't know. So, but still, I did come up with with this response. I don't know. But after all the thinking, I can say that I don't know what a better world would be like. In a very grounded way. I don't mean it as a form of indifference or nihilism or laziness. I mean it in a forceful and decisive way. This I don't know is an expression of sacredness. Wow. Krishnamurti, get out of this body. Sorry about that, but that said, the only thing that I do profoundly feel would make the world better is quite simply more authenticity. That's it. Make of that what you will. Maybe I would encourage you to even understand what that term means for yourself. Authenticity. So, just to wrap it up, I'm not an activist. I don't want to force my ideas on other people, which I hope you can see in this work. And if you read my book, I've noticed that people got it. It's suggestions, raising questions, but it's not enforcing my ideas on others, because I don't think that my ideas are in any way better than other people's idea or perception of the world. But the thing is, maybe I am an activist, because this work is, I guess it is, this work that I do right now, it does have an aim, you know, and it is made to stimulate and feed the search for deeper meaning and understanding, And well, my own understanding to start with. So that's why I only work with things that really, really interest me. But yes, I do hope that this search will be stimulated in others also because of these things that I do. So yeah, I am definitely an anti-activist. Although, if I really want to just throw a wrench in the wheel, like right at the end, like this, I could say that in some ways, just as some would argue that ultimately that there is no self, in some ways there is no activist. And for the mystics, and maybe for everybody, the only thing that's truly true is the mystery. All right, enough of that. I really want to thank you for if you managed to stick to the end, and if that was interesting to you, that's great. And I'm really looking forward to have your comments and your ideas. And even if you disagree with, or you want to expand on what I said, feel free to reach out either in the comments or I guess my email is probably not hard to find. And whatever social media these days, you can reach out. And yeah, that's it. That was wild, man. All right, thank you again, and until next time, keep reaching for the mystery. So you've made it to the end of this Hopscotch Chronicles podcast episode, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed doing it. And I thank you so much for your attention. And I hope you're benefiting in a way or another from this conversation. So if you'd like to follow my work, whether on this podcast or my personal work, you can go to Twitter or X and follow me at Domi_Vallee, DOMI_Vallee. Same username for Instagram if you prefer that platform. You can also go to the official website for the podcast, which is hopscotchchronicles.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast as well as my personal work, you can do so by subscribing to my Patreon. The address is patreon.com/Dominic Vallee, DOMINIC Vallee, VALLEE. There you'll find video and audio versions of the episodes without any commercials, as well as special episodes on every Sunday where I take my Sunday afternoon tea with you guys. All right, thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep reaching for the light.